So I was surfing YouTube to get some new delightful ideas to come into my territory, and I did get some. After that, I've learned some psychological tricks to get people to like me. Being the critic I am, I betrayed my teachers and honored you with today's topic, which is a critique of seeking out validation from others. It's unhealthy in itself to obsess over someone else's validation, but if you are, you may as well be genuine about who you are to get a genuine reply that serves who you are. But instead, from what I've seen, people are jumping from costume to costume and looking for someone else for themselves in a relationship where they are not themselves. They hide in dark psychology tricks to fool their own insecurities just to be delulu. I won't even bother talking about some BS psychological tips, like if you look directly at someone's lips, they will fall in love with you, but if you look at their forehead, they will murder you. I'm going to talk about things that are worth mentioning and that the majority have started to implement, like being unavailable. It is a new belief that being unavailable or busy is considered attractive. Of course, it's not a worse alternative to being clingy, but is not a very mature feature, with avoiding relationship responsibility with its ignored feature. I can only exemplify the hustle culture as what makes unavailability attractive. 5 years ago, protest in Steve Cutts videos was a kind of quality that was looked for in a partner. But now we have Andrew Tate selling ways out of the matrix, as if the concept of retirement is something new that they themselves created, and as if it is not a manipulation that governments have been practicing for centuries to get the masses to work harder for them. But in this day and age, where you don't get a payoff for overworking, it's more of a pile on our imagination, and as a result, work is glamorized more than ever before on the internet, because if you're surrounded by gurus who promise you $10,000 a month versus your job that pays $1,000, those jobs seem otherworldly, and the truth is they are, because 90% of them are scams, and 10% of them are already being taken over by the top 1%. We are aware of this, and no one is willing to point out, but being aware of this creates a completely different toxicity at the relationship level. That is, we no longer want only a rich person, but partners who are close enough to create an ideal in us, but far away enough not to destroy that ideal. The thing is that back in the day, people did not desire the unavailable because it was unavailable, but now social media creates such a misconceptualized paradox that because you see and are exposed to the ultra-successful people and the bombardment of advertisements they shower on you, promising to be like them, or they're shaming you for not working as hard as they do, you value less the people available to you. The people around you become the unavailable type because that's what is valued. That is what is going on with this unavailability is attractive phenomenon, a product of brainwashing and paradoxically worthless to pursue. An unavailable partner is not your partner cause he or she is freaking unavailable. In a healthy, sincere sense, things like being busy are momentary occupations that we all occupy given situation, but pretending to be busy when you are not, or being busy for the sake of attraction when you're in need someone else's validation to the point of using techniques, is toxic. If you have someone you care deeply in your life, instead of escaping from them to somehow catching them, just spend time with them when both of y'all are available and see where it goes. But it should not be the mistake of taking this healthy attitude from unavailability towards clinginess. Clinginess is not a personality trait, but the concentration of all relationships on a particular idealized person. Clinginess is taking your partner as a lens for your eyes and often wanting to keep your eyes closed and keep the lens safe. These people are lonely before their partner, and when they find a prince/princess to match their imaginary loneliness, they may become detached from the outside world through their attachment to their relationship and withdraw from both their partner and others, only to return to absolute loneliness in complete isolation. Another tricky attractive feature promised is narcissism and overconfidence. There are so many gurus who teach you how to be so egotistical that even Max Stirner would be intimidated. Calm down. Like, who are you? Ask yourself this first. Don't build up a life on your ego. Transcend your ego. There are what we call egosyntonic-and-egodystonic concepts. Although they are the concepts used for mental illnesses specifically, in terms of this context, egosyntonic is basically being kind with the manner of waiting for praise to boost your ego, and egodystonic is being kind, knowing that kindness helps with lowering anxiety, as it is the opposite state of being anxious. Basically, egosyntonic means acting according to the needs of the ego, while egodystonic means acting according to the needs of the desires that contradict the ego. In egodynstonic point of view, one knows that the hunger for validation from another is the cause of self-insecurity, as in Narcissism, and acts accordingly or wants. In egosyntonic point of view though, you can't falsify a fact that any ego-related identification is only valid through someone else's validation, like being smart, being fool, or even being attractive in itself. But especially because of this, one should not care about someone else's validation, because basically the identity positioned in someone else's perspective is not yours, and is not objective on the brink of millions of others to interpret it differently. Everybody thinks different. You are not fixed. You can have the most enlightening moment of your life, but 1 minute later it will be just clinging to past memories. What is fixed is the ego. It is the mask you wear for approval. Say that I'm enjoying creating content on YouTube and I'm getting positive feedback. It's a fun hobby for me, but something changes and I'm getting more views and more subscribers. What does that do to my ego? It leads me to identify as a YouTuber. YouTube becomes work for me, and work becomes my ego. I don't feel like uploading videos, but I have to because basically the value I get from outside world gives me an advantage financially, socially, etc. The time I spend on myself with self-love is nothing but guilty pleasure, and it's not limited to work. Metaphorically, a sincere person whose job is to be a nice guy or a bad guy also serves their ego. Nowadays, while being a nice guy is touted as wrong, it is even more wrongly argued that being a bad guy is the way to go. The real problem is to act and behave as someone you are not. People who stay in abusive relationships do so as a traumatic response, not because they find their partner attractive, but because they prefer the familiar to the new. Women who reject nice guys do so because these guys objectify them and see them not as a human being, but as a perfect imaginary princess. Also, they're mainly manipulators, not genuinely nice people. But in the ego they serve, they are nice guys, and their ego will give them what they want as long as they act accordingly. Wrong. What you need to is get out of your ego zone. Lastly, there is false authenticity around this validation-seeking behaviors. There's nothing but excellence in being authentic, yet there's nothing more pathetic than forcing an inauthentic authenticity. You shouldn't confuse authenticism with extraordinariness. Authenticity is to be the person you ought to be. On the other hand though, we know some fellas who shape their identity according to trends and get literally me attitudes while watching Kyriako's grisly clips. I feel you, but you have to make peace with yourself and embrace your neurotypical identity, where you have to accept that you are not extraordinary in all aspects. As our ancestors used to say, "Sir, this is a Wendy's." In conclusion, ego sells, but you shouldn't buy it. You should be yourself, free of your ideal self. That's it.